Hello, welcome. For those of you who have been keeping up with the latest GPU updates from both AMD and Nvidia, know that if you're aiming for decent performance with current GPUs, there's now a practical and affordable solution, the lossless scaling software. If you've been following the channel, you've probably seen me talk about it before. With this program, you can optimize performance without breaking the bank. Of course, performance doesn't just appear out of nowhere. You need at least a decent GPU to get the best results. But this tool has been, and will continue to be, a huge help for many. Lossless scaling has now completed a year of development, and with that comes version 3.0, which brings significant improvements like better visual quality, with fewer artifacts on the edges, up to 40% reduction in GPU usage, up to 24% improvement in latency. And that's exactly what we'll be exploring in today's video, including some tests with emulators. Changelog, visual quality. With frame interpolation, LS 3.0 has received noticeable improvements, like reduced flickering and edge artifacts. You get clearer motion and overall smoother visuals. In my tests, this difference was evident, especially when compared to the previous version, which had many artifacts, especially when spinning the character quickly. GPU performance. There's been a 40% reduction in GPU usage for the X2 mode, which is noticeable when compared to the previous LSFG, lossless scaling frame generation, even without activating the performance mode. This means less powerful GPUs can now interpolate even more frames. A reduction of over 45% in GPU consumption for multipliers above X2, compared to LSFG2. They've added a resolution scaling function, a great option to reduce GPU load even further. For example, setting it to 90% is similar to the performance mode of LSFG2. This feature works like AMD FSR's adjustable quality. At 90%, interpolated frames are generated at a lower resolution, improving performance with little to no quality loss. Improved latency. More demanding users often complain about latency. While I play casually and don't mind it too much, it's still an important factor. In the latest version, tests with the OSLTT tool, at a 40 FPS base and X2 interpolation, showed a 24% reduction in total latency compared to LSFG2. According to the LS team, tests with an RTX 4090 at 4K resolution and 60 FPS show that normal latency is around 28 milliseconds per frame. Using LSFG3, generating a new frame for each native frame, latency increases to 41 milliseconds. LSFG2, by comparison, showed 54 milliseconds latency in the same scenario. Generated frames. Now, LSFG3 virtually eliminates the limit on the number of frames that can be interpolated, allowing up to 20 generated frames per native frame. However, it's important to keep in mind that multiplying frames in games with low FPS, for example, 15 to 20 FPS, doesn't guarantee decent playability. For 1080p, a minimum of 30 FPS native is recommended for acceptable stability. Another helpful tip is to lock the FPS to a safe value to prevent the GPU from reaching 100% usage. This helps reduce latency impact and ensures a more stable frame rate during gameplay. If you're aiming to play at resolutions above 1080p, it's recommended to use the scaling suggested by LS. For 1440p, set scaling to 75%. For 4K, use 50%. For those with extremely high frame rate monitors who want to take advantage of that, here are some recommendations. 48 FPS in X5 mode is recommended for 240Hz monitors. 60 FPS in X6 mode for 360Hz monitors. 60 FPS in X8 mode for 480Hz monitors. However, I believe if you've invested in such a high-end screen, you likely already have a GPU capable of generating those frames natively. So, for me, this setup doesn't make as much sense. To install the new version of lossless scaling, simply opt for the beta version on Steam. As usual, I tested the software with emulators that were underperforming and I'm here to share the results with you. Before we dive into that, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel to stay updated with more content. Starting with RPCS3, I use games with unstable FPS, typically known to stay in the in-game category. I chose to lock the FPS at 40 and use multipliers X3 to reach 120 FPS, and X4 to reach 180 FPS, which is the max my monitor supports. Metal Gear Solid 4 in X3 mode, unlike previous versions of LS, where there were many annoying graphic artifacts, this time I noticed a huge improvement. The game stayed quite stable in terms of fluidity, accurately representing 120 FPS. However, if shader compilation happens or there's a sudden performance drop, stability might be affected. In X4 mode, even though artifacts were considerably reduced, in scenarios where the frame rate drops drastically, the LS algorithm seems to struggle, creating distorted or ghosted frames, especially around the character. Despite this, I noticed that the UI was better handled in this version, solving common issues from earlier versions. God of War 3 in this game, I know the ideal setup would be running at 40 FPS native, but even below that value, the result was impressive. During Kratos' fast movements, the frame generation algorithm kept the ground stable, without major deformation or issues. Testing in various game environments, I was satisfied with the result, which I considered decent for playing from start to finish without many inconveniences. One persistent problem when using LS with RPCS 3 is that it can't select the emulator window when it's in full screen. To fix this, you need to use the maximized window mode. While it's not the perfect solution, as it leaves black borders around the screen, it's the functional workaround for now. I believe that future updates will fix this, as similar bugs have been resolved in earlier versions. With the latest version of Xenia Canary, I tested the game Gears of War 2, which has fast movement, and caused many issues in previous tests, especially when rotating the camera around the character. In this version, the results were significantly better. I didn't notice any ghosting or unwanted artifacts near the character. The fluidity reached a solid 120 FPS, without affecting shooting accuracy or causing noticeable delays. However, with Xenia, it's important to adjust settings based on your hardware, as the emulator's performance relies more on the GPU than the CPU, unlike other projects. I also ran a long test with the latest version of Citron, using Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. The result was one of the most impressive I've achieved so far. This game, which is already naturally beautiful, running close to 120 FPS, would truly be a dream come true for any PC gamer. Unfortunately, it's hard to maintain this frame rate unless you have one of the best processors on the market. In general, in areas with a lot of grass, the algorithm presents some issues. Even though I didn't go beyond X3 mode, I know the game is still very demanding for my PC, and it can't maintain the recommended constant 40 FPS. Despite that, I really enjoyed the experience, and would play the game this way without any issues. Tests with Shad PS4. I started testing with the PlayStation 4's native 30 FPS. To my surprise, there were quite a few artifacts, and at times I wasn't sure if the flickers were caused by LS or the game itself. While playing at 90 FPS is interesting, I wouldn't recommend this mode because of the visual artifacts. In the second test, I set the native 40 FPS recommended and used the X3 multiplier in LS. The number of artifacts was drastically reduced, but there was a bug where the character's weapon disappeared. This was related to the emulator, not LS. I found this setup very optimized and satisfactory. One observation I have here is that sometimes there seems to be a frame parsing issue. The frame seemed a bit slower, but this was only noticed with Shad PS4. I suspect it happened because I limited the FPS in MSI Afterburner, not directly in the emulator. In the last test, I left the FPS unlocked, allowing a maximum of 60. Surprisingly, I didn't notice any significant artifacts, and the latency was much lower. This allowed me to make some really tricky dodges. However, once again, I noticed frame parsing issues where the frame seemed slightly out of sync, which caused some minor issues. It's important to highlight that this problem was exclusive to Shad PS4. No other emulator gave me this feeling of frames not performing as expected. Finally, I chose a native PC game, Forza Horizon 4, to demonstrate that LS isn't considered cheating in online games. For those wondering, LS works just like any screen capture program, except it changes how the game is displayed on the monitor. No files, DLLs, or software are injected into the game. In the test, I played Forza Horizon with 60 FPS locked, multiplying by X3 to reach my monitor's 180 Hz. Even though it's a fast-paced game, since the frames were locked, there were no graphical issues, whether in gameplay or the user interface. Now you might be wondering, what configuration should I use, overall? I'll answer this simply: use the smallest multiplier possible to minimize visual issues and reduce input delay. Also, remember that LS will use a portion of your GPU and a bit of your CPU to generate these new frames. That's why sometimes it's much more beneficial to lock the game at 40 FPS and multiply it by 2 or 3 to ensure smoother gameplay, rather than pushing your GPU to its full capacity and ending up with gameplay full of visual flaws. One recommendation I have is to use LS only for games you play to have fun with friends. In competitive games, the best option is still to use native FPS. For example, If you're playing CS2 at 60 FPS, it's much better than trying to display 80 FPS with LS, simply because those 20 native FPS could be crucial for winning or losing an AWP battle, rather than the 80 FPS generated by LS, where half of the frames offer no advantage. You can also use LS to boost FPS for movies and anime. For example, you can run an anime at 24 FPS and multiply it by 3 to reach 60 FPS. Try it out, and see how it makes a difference in the experience. For those interested, lossless scaling is available on Steam. I'll leave the link in the description of the video. Just a reminder, I'm only recommending it and don't receive any commissions from sales. Thank you for your audience, and I'll see you in the next video.